All right. So, Matt, I was reorganizing my bookshelf the other day, and I dropped my copy of Oliver Twist directly on my toe.
Really?
It hurt like the dickens, man.
Dang, I should have seen that one.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable, because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Not bad, man. Not bad at all.
Good. Well, before we get into it, we'll say go over to patreon.com/Graveyard Tales. Sign up to become a patron. You guys don't know how much your patronage helps me and Matt. And it's not just for an ego boost. You know, we like the ego boost. Don't get me wrong. We enjoy a stroked ego like anybody else does.
That's right.
But it really does help keep the lights on and the tombstones polished here in the graveyard, because all of this is electronic, digital, and as anybody who works with computers know, this crap breaks. And then when it breaks, you got to get a new thing. And if not, we don't put a show out. So you guys literally keep the show going. So sign up to become a patron. We've got 3 different levels. We've got a bunch of different back catalogs. You know, depending on the level you pick, you can get bonus episode, or you can get bonus plus ad-free versions. And our $10, they get our second show side quest that we're about to record here in just a minute. Matt and I love doing the side quest episodes, but we think you will like them because it's a different side of me and Matt, if you want to check that out. Plus, there's a buttload of episodes to keep you busy on a long summer road trip or whatever. Also, another way you can help us out is check out our sponsors. Go down in the show notes, and we've got links to our sponsors' websites with a code if it's applicable, and you can get a discount on it and get you something cool or a cool product or service from our sponsors. Go check them out. So, Matt, I'm going to cut off the normal long rambling intro here and get right into it, because I think people are going to like this episode. But tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
All right. So tonight we have a very special guest. We're going to talk about, talk to rather. He's been on the show a few times before. We've known him for several years now. We've done some work with him. It's Chris Williamson is going to be on tonight, and he's got some new projects that he's got coming up. He's going to talk about. We're going to get into all of his work that he's done in the Chasing Earhart project, and dig into some of the past episodes he's done of Vanished, which Adam and I had the pleasure to help him on a few of those episodes as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
You know, we talk to Chris just about every day.
Yeah.
And so it's good to kind of bring him on the show and talk to him, you know, with all of you guys.
Yep. In a more official capacity.
That's right. Official capacity.
Rather than just meme sharing.
Yeah. So, if you've not listened to any of his past shows, go check him out. Chasing Earhart, Vanished. And like I said, he's got more in the works. He's a great guy, and I think you'll enjoy this.
All right, everybody. So we're back with our buddy Chris Williamson. Chris, thank you for joining us again on another episode of Graveyard Tales. We appreciate you coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, man. Thank you both for having me. This is it's always an honor.
Yep. So we have some new listeners. I've seen them. Not personally.
They're real.
Yeah, I spy on them occasionally. They're not
real.
bots. I swear,
Yeah.
Mom, they're not bots.
Right.
But for our new non-bot listeners, why don't you introduce yourself, tell people why they should know the name Chris Williamson?
Oh gosh. Well, I would say so I've been doing podcasting for quite some time. I've been doing podcasting probably for about 7 or 8 years now. And I kind of dabble in a little bit of everything, but my wheelhouse is historical mystery. And that's what I've been sort of known for the most, if you will. So if you know the Amelia Earhart case, you've probably heard, or if you're interested in the Amelia Earhart case, you probably have heard an episode of Chasing Earhart, the Chasing Earhart podcast. I've been running that for quite some time now, and we're in a rebrand at the moment that just doesn't seem to want to stop for whatever reason, even though we try to sort of step away sometimes and new guests step up and we get new folks. And so that's going. And you might also know me from a show I do with my co-host, Jen Taylor. It's a show called Vanished. And we did a few seasons of that show. Our original season was about Amelia Earhart. And we've since had coverage on, Zodiac, on John Wilkes Booth. On our most recent one was Jesse James. We did a 2-parter on that. And we've done, a few other folks, DB Cooper, things of that nature. And, I've got a couple other shows. I'm always guesting on other people's shows. And so that's kind of, if you've heard my voice, that's probably where you've heard it. Yep.
And if you're anything like me, you've bought books that Chris has written. Yeah.
Yes.
Got those in my library. Don't have them behind me because they're in the library downstairs with all the other books. So
of course.
I should have thrown them on the shelf behind me during this. That shows you how unprofessional I am. I'm like, I'm just going to have my friend on.
Okay. I got, one of them, you can't really see. It's way back there, but I got rabbit holes way back there in the back of my office. All but right. I have a couple of books and a third one on the way. So awesome. It's, all right. It's all part of the plan, I guess.
Yep. So on that note, you mentioned Amelia Earhart. That's when we first had you on. That's what we discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I know Matt and I both do this to you frequently, and we do it now because it's funny, because we know how often you see this. Mm-hmm. But we'll send you links to articles that say so-and-so has found Amelia Earhart's plane. Check back next month.
We have figured it out.
Yeah, we figured it out. And then next month rolls around and there's just crickets because it wasn't Amelia Earhart's plane and they didn't find it, but they don't want to come out and go, oops. So can you take us through like some updates on that case since we last talked about Amelia Earhart's disappearance? And if you're unfamiliar and you want a quick, dirty rundown of it, go back and check out one of our other episodes with Chris. If you want the whole story of it, go check out Chris's podcast and you'll get a big in-depth look into it. But what are some of the new updates and all the mess that we have sent you and that you get thousands of times a day?
Yeah, well, you're right. I do. I get, my inbox for Chasing Earhart is chock full of, emails and things of people that have, claimed to have found the plane in one part of the world or the other. There's been a lot that's gone on. It's a case that just doesn't, it doesn't go away. The big thing that's happened, recently, fairly recently, is the discovery, I guess, and the confirmation by Deep Sea Vision and Tony Romeo, who were looking out in a spot near Howland and Baker. If you're familiar with the case at all, Howland Island was where Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan were trying to end up. They were really close, according to the Itasca call logs. The Itasca is a ship that was sort of there to help guide them in. Everybody says, historically speaking, they were pretty close. And not too long ago, Deep Sea Vision, which is another deep sea exploration company. They do a lot more than just searching for Earhart, of course. Definitely underselling them here. But they were out. They were very interested in the case, and they had some target locations that they were interested in. And one of them happened to sort of be in the area, sort of split between Howland and Baker, which would have been a likely spot for Fred Noonan to try to get them, in the best possible spot for a potential rescue in those final moments back in 1937. And they found what they thought was a very promising they took a sonar image that they almost didn't, really pay much attention to. And turns out when they did look at it, it looked sort of like maybe like a plane. It kind of looked like the formation was maybe close to a plane. Now, in that area, I mean, obviously the go-to is Earhart's Electra, because that's right where she was saying she was to Leo Bellart's when she went down. So it makes practical sense. About 10 months after they made the initial discovery of the sonar image, they went back out and released new information on it. And it turns out it was just as Tony says, a very cruel trick of nature. It was a pile of rocks about 16,000 feet down that looked an awful lot like, a plane formation. And when this happens, when he first comes on the show, there's a lot of doubters in the community. Naturally, that's sort of what happens in the Earhart case. When anybody puts anything forward, the very first thing that happens is, the doubt comes crashing through first before there is any kind of support really, outside of your team. So that happens. That, sets the whole world on fire as it tends to do with this case. Anytime something new is discovered, it becomes a big deal. And it becomes sort of like the centerpiece of the case for that moment. But it turns out it wasn't what they thought and what they hoped it would be. And so we have, another very educated swing, but a miss. And that's unfortunately par for the course for Amelia Earhart, especially with deep ocean searches, really with the whole case. There's no, none of these other theories that we'll probably talk about or touch on, or we have touched on in the past. Nothing is really, hitting home. Everybody's sort of got different types of information and different types of supporting evidence for their theory, but nobody has obviously brought anything home that's, anything worth writing home about specifically. So that's kind of where we are. I get emails all the time, like I said earlier on, about, different areas in the world. My co-host for the show, Jen Taylor for Vanished, she was part of an amazing documentary about a year-ish ago called Finding Amelia. It's available right now on Max if your listeners want to go stream it. And that is all about the East New Britain theory and the idea that Earhart and Noonan went down, actually not in the water or anything like that, but in the jungles of East New Britain. And that there was an aircraft that was spotted there many, 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 many years ago by a group of soldiers, Australian soldiers that were kind of not bivouacked, but were going through the area looking for things. And they found these really incredible clues and these really incredible pieces of evidence that they felt, kind of attached it to Earhart. But they've not been able to relocate the aircraft in that area since then. And it's been very difficult. And again, you're looking in these massive search areas for a 55 and a half inch or 55 and a half foot, airplane, essentially wingspan wise. And so that's kind of where we're at. We got a lot of swings, a lot of aggressive ones. People are going at it. There's active investigations all over right now as we speak. And, when anything happens in this case, people tend to get real excited about it, but there's a lot of premature, excitement, I think, and people need to sort of take a step back. I mean, it's been a case that's gone this unsolved for this long for a reason. Yeah. And it's not an easy one to pick off. And, the best minds in the world are working on it right now. And, we'll see what happens.
I think we touched on this last time, maybe. I can't remember if we did or not, but why do you think that the Amelia Earhart disappearance has resonated with people across the world for as long as it has, when, we have many other disappearances, a lot of other plane disappearances, stuff like that. What do you think? I mean, I have my own opinions, but what do you think is the biggest thing behind why it's, on everybody's mind, and why everybody is so interested in it as opposed to other disappearances?
I think it's because of who she was as a person. She's still considered, America's sweetheart to this day. There's a lot about her legacy that is, how do I say this? It's a little cloudy in certain areas. Earhart really was very good at sort of walking a fine line and keeping sort of, things close to the chest. She was very good at keeping her personal life, even though, people tried to make a mockery of her personal life and sort of still do. And she was good at keeping things personal that were personal to her, really personal. And I think it's because of sort of that mystery of it. And it's because she was as famous as she was and really still is now, that people just want to know. I mean, it's like, man, what could have possibly happened? It's been such a big deal for so long. I think her impact has really sort of sent shockwaves over aviation, over aerospace, into STEM, into education, into feminism, modern day feminism. I mean, this is a woman that was probably 100 years ahead of her time, mentally, emotionally, and so, characters like that, people like that just don't come along that often. History is obviously chock full of them. And I think that's why we're so fascinated with history. But this is a woman that, I mean, I don't know how many people on this call are Taylor Swift fans, but imagine someone like Taylor Swift just vanishing off the face of the earth with no explanation. At the height of her fame, Earhart was the most photographed and videographed person on the face of the earth when she disappeared at 39. I mean, it's just weird. It's really weird. And, everything that we know about this case, historically speaking, documentation speaking, with what we have with the Itasca call logs and with Leo Bellarts and him talking to her and everything that we've got that is, quote unquote, factual. We still have no idea. We still have no idea what happened all these years later. And it's spawned all of these incredible theories, and the disappearance itself has now shifted into, it's got its own narrative. The disappearance has its own narrative now. And, I just did a conversation, or just had a conversation with Amy Lutz, who's our most recent episode of Chasing Earhart. And she talks about something in that episode I think is very powerful and very poignant. And it's that Earhart's kind of lost her own voice a little bit in the disappearance. And, what would Earhart think of, all these old white guys that are trying to find her, and, all this old, all this stuff that's going on, all the, what I often wonder, if I had one question to ask her, I would say, what she's become sort of a polarizing figure. And I wonder, what she thinks about that, or what she would think about that. And so, I think you sort of package all that up into one, one person, and it, that's why it's such a, and then Noonan was such a giant for aviation. I mean, if Noonan just ceased to exist and Noonan wasn't in history, Pan Am wouldn't be Pan Am. We wouldn't have, celestial navigation, nautical navigation, any of that. It wouldn't have made the strides that it made in the time when he was alive. He was responsible for a lot of that. And for these two people to just boom, gone off the face of the earth, it's wild. And people want to know. And it's been, we're working on 90 years, I think, in a couple of years. We're coming up, and it just, nobody's got a clue. And that fascinates people, I think, naturally.
Yeah.
You bring up Fred Noonan. And I'll be honest, I didn't know who Fred Noonan was until I started listening to your show. I didn't know who he was, and I did a little looking into it, and I was just amazed. I was like, how many of these people exist that behind the scenes, shaped what we take for granted now?
Yes.
They weren't famous for it. They not globally.
Right.
But they did so much that without their contributions, you're right. It would not have happened as quickly as it did. And, I was just sitting there going, I kind of feel stupid not knowing who this guy was,
Well, I mean, he had a hell of a career too. I mean, what he did for Pan Am, I mean, he's responsible for mapping a lot of Pan Am's routes through the Pacific. I mean, the guy is, I say this all the time. It's true. Like if you were going on a voyage of that type at that time, that's absolutely the guy you want on the plane with you. 100%.
Absolutely the best one she could have.
100%. And she believed in him. A lot of people say, to her fatal detriment. She, there is a quote, and I don't have it offhand, but I was researching a few months ago, and there was a newspaper quote. She might have been talking to a newspaper in Oakland, and somebody mentioned offhandedly, something about, was she worried about losing her way on this flight, or was she worried about getting turned around or whatever? And her, paraphrasing a little bit, but for the most part, her quote was, "I brought the best navigator in the world to make sure that wouldn't happen." Like, she knew 100% that, she had, they might have, had some moral disagreements and things, but professionally, I think she 100% believed in his capability and his ability to get them safely around the world. And, it's good enough for me. If she believed in him like that, then, who are we to question him, when it comes to the drinking and the stuff like that.
Yeah. All right, Matt. So let's talk about tonight's sponsor, Fume. Now, I've heard the quote my whole life. Folks who have no vices have very few virtues, by Abraham Lincoln. However, I think some of us could use fewer vices. I know that was the case for me. I had a little too many vices, too many bad habits, and I figured it was time to ditch one. So thankfully we found Fume, and Fume is here to help you with a smarter alternative. It's a flavored air device. It's not a vape, it's not a pipe, but it's completely different than all those. It lets you satisfy the urge to reach for something, and it doesn't have nicotine, vapor, batteries, anything like that, and it has some amazing flavors to choose from.
Because when I'm driving around all day, part of my bad habit is always I need something to fiddle with.
Right.
And, hand to mouth, that whole thing. And the Fume is great for that. It's fiddly, it's clicky, it's weighted, it's beautiful metal and wood combined with magnetic connections, and it just feels right in the hand. It feels right when you put it to your mouth. And Adam's right, the flavors are phenomenal, like crisp mint, black licorice, and peach blush. My favorite, the maple black pepper.
That's mine too, yeah.
Yeah, it was perfect for me. But it is the smarter, guilt-free alternative. It's not a vape. It's not a pipe. It is a flavored air device that is nicotine-free and helps you kick those bad habits that sometimes are really, really tough. So if you're ready to kick your bad habit, Fume has already helped over 400,000 people. So it's your turn. Go to tryfume.com. That's TRYFUM.com. And use our code TALES, TALES, to get a free gift with your journey pack.
That's right. Tryfume.com, TRYFUM.com, and use our code TALES, TALES, and you can get this limited time offer today.
Yeah. So interesting guy in and of himself, newly remarried, had plans, wanted to establish a navigation school, post world flight. We talk about all the time, what Earhart might have done had she come back. Well, Earhart wasn't the only one that had plans and a life and a new wife waiting for him, and maybe some babies in his future. Who knows? Who knows? So yeah, it adds to the tragedy, but Noonan had the balls to go on that trip when everybody else sort of abandoned ship, after the ground loop, and he stayed with her the whole route. And ultimately he paid, depending on what theory you're going to buy into, he paid one hell of a price for that loyalty. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of theories, I think it was about a month ago, I came across this and I sent it to y'all and was like, check this out. And it was that she had flown to Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and what was so funny is the guy presenting it as like, look, this is fact. This is 100% fact, verified and everything. And I was like, well, hey, Chris, what do you say?
Yeah, right.
This, it was like she went a la Admiral Byrd to, to chase down, hey, is there a cave to the center of the earth in Antarctica?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go find out.
And for the last 100 years, she's been circling inside the center of the earth.
Yeah, she's still
stuck
going.
in a loop.
She's still going in one of the inner shells. But no, so as absurd as that sounds, I know you've probably heard things that crazy or even more. What's the craziest one that has surfaced in your research of what alternate route or idea might she have had when she took off?
Well, that's a good one for sure. The Antarctica thing is a good one. Aliens is my favorite. I love that. That's idea
one of
that,
my favorites.
Alien.
Yeah. The idea that
mid-flight.
Mid-flight or, into an alternate dimension, maybe. Jay Ferber, who's a project guest, who's a comic book writer and just an amazingly talented guy, wrote a comic called Elseworld, where, and I guess it's spoiler alert if you haven't read the comic, but it's old now. It's been out for a while now. But basically she hooks up with DB Cooper in an alternate timeline and they pull a heist together and they, and all kinds of fun stuff. It's a really great story that he crafted. And, I think she's a character that, people can have fun with all that fantasy and stuff and all that. 'Cause she's sort of a character that, she never got to age. Right. So we never saw Earhart as an old, feeble lady. We never saw her lose her faculties. We never saw anything happen to her other than just maybe she flies off into the sunset. And I think because of that, all of these theories abound. So, the aliens and alternate dimensions and Antarctica and, even some of the major ones, the whole repatriation idea, the idea that she was in Japanese custody and, that she actually was repatriated years later. This is post World War II or post Pearl Harbor, rather, post World War II, depending again on what you believe, that she was brought back to the United States. I know we've talked about that one before. And she's, was given one of the very first high profile people in the witness protection program and was given an alternate identity and lived out her life on the East Coast. And she never flew again. And that's a really sort of that's a death. People look at this in a lot of ways of like, oh, well, she made it back. It's like, well, no, she died. Like Amelia Earhart herself died in that theory. She was Irene Bolam or she was somebody else or whatever you want to go with in that particular situation.
Did that, if that's true and she came back and she was not able to fly anymore, I think she probably would have rather have died because flying and navigation was so much a part of her that she just leave me in the jungle. I'll just do that instead because this is terrible.
Yeah. And the whole Japanese capture thing, it's horrific. It's horrific. We have discussions. We've recently reformed something called the Amelia Earhart Society. So if you know anything about Earhart research, you'll know that back in, earlier than the 80s even, but the 80s and 90s especially, the heyday of the Amelia Earhart Society, anybody who was anybody that was in the Earhart game was in that group, like Fred Gerner, Joe Jervis, like all these people that wrote these really big marquee books that are, make up a lot of Earhart's lore and legacy and legend of the disappearance and all that. And we've recently reformed that with some original members of the Amelia Earhart Society and a lot of the newer folks, the newer generation that are, have specialties in certain things. And one of them is, we talk a lot about Japanese capture and the whole idea of, again, I just had Amy Lutz on and we talked all about the misinformation in the Amelia Earhart case, in which there is plenty. And, Japanese capture is one of those theories that is just sort of like a pit of misinformation, or it can be a pit of misinformation, I should say, depending on sort of kind of what narrative you want to follow down. I mean, an awful lot can get lost really quickly when you start going into certain theories. I think, we've always tried to follow the evidence wherever it leads, so to speak. So we dig out everything that we can dig out. If there's I don't care what the theory is, like we'll dig it out as much as we can until there's nothing left or, until we kind of hit an impasse. But I mean, all these theories are just sort of, out there floating around and they're still being worked right now. And Japanese capture is still the most fervently defended and passionately discussed maybe of all of them,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and not to, like, I'm not just blowing smoke or anything, but that's one of the things that I've always liked about your and Jen's coverage of Amelia Earhart and other disappearances and stuff that we'll move into here in a second, but is the fact that y'all take a look at all the possibilities and you follow that path down and you take them seriously until you can't take them seriously anymore. And we have we have an issue in what Matt and I do with a lot of the stuff that we talk about. Matt and I will take it seriously. Let's say a cryptid, we'll say Bigfoot. We see so often people poo-poo it before they even look at it.
Right.
They'll go, oh, there is absolutely no way, you're stupid, move on. It's like, well, wait a minute. There's all these little nuggets of stuff that follow that. Then if you get to the end of that trail and there is nothing, then tell me I'm stupid. And then you can poo-poo it. But, it's the same way with Amelia Earhart and some of these other vanishings and just mysteries is if somebody doesn't like that theory, they immediately say no.
Confirmation bias.
Yep.
A form of it.
We did a UFO case not too long ago, and I always, like, for the past few weeks, I have forgotten what the name of it is until I go look it up after we record, and then I remember it and go, why are you so stupid and you couldn't think of that while recording? But one of the theories was, no, it wasn't a UFO. They were seeing the refraction of a star that was in the desert. So they saw a star millions of light years away, but looked like a vehicle up close, and it wasn't people getting out of it.
Yeah. You're thinking of the Terry Lovelace.
Was it Terry Lovelace?
I think so.
Yeah, Devil's Den.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't that one. It was the one before that in the desert. That's why I always remember Terry, but it was the other one we did.
Have you guys talked to Terry yet?
No, I know he lives close to me in the DFW area, but have not. I reached out to him, but I don't think I got.
I'm happy to put you in touch with him if you want to talk to him, because I think he's an awesome. He would be great on your show. His story is insane. It's an insane story, and he tells it so well. And it's like, and you listen to him. I heard him on, of course, Astonishing Legends when he was on with them and their Devil's Den piece, and it's like you listen to him and you're immediately captivated by his story. He doesn't f around. Like, it gets right into it, and it's just, you're there, and you feel like this guy, look, whether what he says is, whether what happened, or not, I can't even talk right now. Whether you believe him or not, he tells a real compelling story. And he does. It might be completely nuts, but he believes it. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the thing with whatever you feel, if you feel like it's completely nuts, if you feel like it's a completely crazy, that's kind of, when I talk with Jen about the show and everything, it's we talked about doing Earhart. Essentially, it's like, look, people are going to have different, theories. They're going to have different ideas. But the one thing they're all going to have in common is that they 100% believe in it. 100%. It's not theory. It's truth. If you look at Japanese capture, I mean, it's, we have this thing, the truth at last, right? Like, this is really what happened to her. That's, and Noonan, they died in Japanese custody. It's not theory. It's fact. It's 100% fact. And people will die on that hill and have died on that hill. People have gone to their graves knowing, like they know that she was repatriated and came back to the United States, or that she just crashed in the ocean, or that she was a spy, or, take your pick, really. And it's not unlike any of these other stories, really. Well,
and like with the Terry Lovelace, Lonnie Zamora is the one I was thinking about.
Lonnie Zamora. Yeah.
But, these people, they're Terry, Lonnie, they don't have a history of fabricating things. They actually have the opposite. You know, they are super smart people. They are very straightforward people. They don't play practical jokes, no history of that. So first of all, why would this be the first and last thing that they do is, oh, I saw a UFO. Believe me or not, I don't care, but this is what I saw. That's not a good practical joke. First of all, you know, you don't have to believe me, but here's what, but I mean, these people tell you so sincerely, and some of them, like Terry, hold it in for so long because they don't want to get ridiculed, because they know how people are. And then as soon as they put it out there, they get ridiculed, and they're like, oh no, you saw Jupiter's moon refracting in the light, and you're like, okay, he's not that stupid. I don't think, no, that's not what it is. But people are so unwilling to even humor that conversation that they go to that. But these witnesses, I've heard people say, don't tell me what I saw. I know what I saw.
I was there.
Yeah. I hear that all the time in like in Bigfoot sightings. They're like, don't tell me what I saw. I know it wasn't a bear, or I know it wasn't, you know, it was not a mangy coyote. It was something different. It was the chupacabra, you know, and these witnesses that see it, I see why they don't want to come out and say anything, because people are so stuck on their idea of the way the world is and how things should be, that they don't want to accept it. And like Matt has said many times, that's the low hanging fruit that they're going after. The debunking of it is such low hanging fruit that, like I've said, it's dead on the ground and you're stomping on a rotten apple. It's not even low hanging fruit anymore.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point, and it stretches across to all cases. I know that, since we're talking about Earhart and chiefly about Earhart, with Earhart, people are always quick to debunk anything that's put forward that is new, or that is a different line of theory, or a different line of maybe a different line of understanding. And so, I think, but with eyewitness testimony, it's interesting. And I keep going back to the last conversation I had with Amy Lutz, who was our most current guest, but she made some excellent points about eyewitness testimony and sort of, so just to give you guys a quick aside, for people who are listening to this, you can Google this if you'd like, while we're talking about it. There's a movie, I think it came out in 1942. It's called Flight for Freedom. And it's a movie. It was a movie that was very, very, very much, when you watch a trailer or a clip of it or anything, it's almost immediate that it's based off of Amelia Earhart, and the whole idea, and the Japanese capture idea, and the idea behind one of the more popular ideas is that she was a spy, that Earhart was a spy, maybe not to the degree that you might think a spy would be when you think of a spy, but she was participating in spy-like activity on behalf of the United States government, however you want to look at that. What's interesting about Flight for Freedom is, one, there's rumor, and I don't think it's true, but there is rumor that it was ghost written by George Palmer Putnam, who was Amelia Earhart's husband, and who was a genius at marketing. He published Charles Lindbergh's book and Earhart's books, and he was a genius. That's what he did. That movie comes out, and interestingly enough, right after that movie comes out, you start seeing the very first eyewitness testimony sort of surface in pop culture and in the newspaper and things like that of, people that saw Amelia Earhart in the Marshall Islands and or Saipan or Fred Noonan or the plane or all three. And it's interesting how that sort of starts. You have this movie that comes out. It's a piece of pop culture that sort of gets it, not unlike today, gets it in the wherewithal of everybody's, mind and their consciousness, and gets everybody thinking about this whole alternate idea. Meanwhile, it's been, years and years and aircrafts or nobody has found the aircraft in the ocean. Everybody keeps striking out. And all of a sudden, these eyewitness testimonies, they start to pop up, these accounts, and it starts to add up and add up and add up. And all of a sudden you have, 100, 200 people. But what I learned in our Zodiac piece, there was a good guest, a great guest, and I'm forgetting his name. It's Richard Grinnell. His name is slipping, but his name is Richard Grinnell, and he makes a really good observation. The observation is if you have a bucket, right, and you have this like you start out with a weak sauce argument, and in the bucket you start filling up the bucket because other things you start getting confirmation bias. You start looking for things to fit your theory and everything. Pretty soon you're going to have a really full bucket. But what you really have is not really a full bucket. It's just a bucket full of weak sauce. That's really all it is. So it's not there's not actual physical evidence.
Adam, it's hard to find people that are as into the stuff that you and I are into, out in public.
Right.
We hang out in the graveyard. We had all our people around us. But in public situations, sometimes you're just looking for that conversation. In Amanda's case, she always tries to find those people that are into true crime.
Right.
You wish your friends were into true crime as much as you were? Well, Stephanie and Olivia from the popular True Crime Society social media accounts are ready to tap into your true crime besties to guide you through the latest cases taking the internet by storm. Listen as they break down timelines and go over the most popular and sometimes ridiculous case theory.
That's right. True Crime Society podcast covers everything true crime, from missing people and cold cases to the latest breaking news. Host Olivia and Stephanie bonded over their interest in true crime and created an online community of over 200,000 crime enthusiasts who demanded a podcast. So Olivia is based in Sydney and Stephanie is in New York, which offers unique global perspectives. Kind of like me and Matt. I'm in Texas, Matt's up in Tennessee. Not quite as global, but there's some different perspectives, Listeners say the podcast reminds them of chatting with their friends about whatever the latest case is. So a lot like, if you like Graveyard Tales and the way we do Graveyard Tales, you will like True Crime Society podcast. So be sure to search for and subscribe to True Crime Society podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, like Graveyard Tales. You'll find them there too.
It's just this might have happened and this might have happened and this might have happened. And you have a bunch of eyewitnesses, quote unquote eyewitnesses that come say, hey, we saw Amelia Earhart, and people that support that idea and that theory say, look at those eyewitnesses have never changed their stories in the entirety of their lives. They went to their graves and are never changing their stories. We hear this all the time with credible eyewitnesses like the military post World War II that were on Saipan, like Julius Neighbors and Robert Wallach, who has a hell of a story that has a very disappointing ending in it. But you look at all that and you start looking at all of the evidence, and you have to sort of ask yourself, how much of this is actual legitimate, evidence, and how much of it is just he said, she said, or a bunch of people, secondhand, third hand, and sometimes even longer hearsay that is just adding up to what we've got now in 2025, which is a lot of confusion, around certain theories. And I think Japanese capture is a great case study for that, as far as how all that happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about the there can be. The information can be too much. You can get too much where it muddies the water. And I think the Amelia Earhart case is that way in a lot of ways. And probably more so than anybody, because you have looked at all the options where most people are in their camps and they don't move out of that camp. You can't pull them out of the Howland Island camp, or you can't pull them out of the Japanese capture camp.
Mm-hmm.
But when you step back and look at it from afar, it kind of makes it hard to solve that mystery because there is so much mud in the water.
Yep.
And I think that doesn't help, in my opinion, to solve such a high profile, long running mystery. You know, and I don't know that personally, I don't know if it would help if more people got on board with each other's theories and helped each other out or not. But I think there's better ways to go about it.
Too many cooks right there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're starting to see a shift, and especially for this case, you're definitely starting to see a shift in the way people are sort of, reaching across the aisle, to take a political term or phrase rather, and sort of helping each other out. I happen to believe that with the amount of time and space that has occurred since July 2nd of 37, we're coming up on yet another, actually, crap, 7, I didn't even realize this. We're 7 days away from, right? 7 days, 8 days away from another anniversary.
Yeah.
So, it's poignant timing to do this, but like, you have all those people that are working these different theories that are, just as invested in this now as, they were the day after, that she went missing. And I think it's a testament to Earhart's legacy, to Noonan's legacy, to why people are still grinding so hard on this to try to, put this one to bed. And as we talked about, even offline, I think if you take this one off, if you knock this one out, then, that's a big one. It's a big one off the list. And there's others that are very big. Don't get me wrong. But, finding out what happened to Earhart after this many years, I think, it would be, and after this much, infighting, with this case, you have one ultimate question at the top, then you've got like 100 feet of shit, and then you've got the answer at the bottom. And we're kind of like maybe 60% down through the shit right now. We're trying to get to the answer at the bottom, the ultimate answer, which is basically just what happened. When you find out what happened, you're going to naturally have 100 other questions that will be birthed out of that answer. Because, let's say you find the plane in the bottom of the ocean. Well, then you got, a bunch of other questions you could ask about their final moments, how that might have happened. Japanese capture, if you believe the theory, the plane is decimated. You'll never find it. If that's the case, if it's in Buka, which is another one we haven't really talked about. But if it's in Buka, then, we have an intact aircraft, but it's a ghost of an airframe. You're not going to raise that fuselage out of the water in Buka and destroy that nautical environment and all that. That's just not happening. It's an underwater tomb. Our best bet and kind of the decision we've made when it comes to going out to Buka to either write this in or out is to go after the engine. Cause the theory states that the engine separated on landing and that, the engine you can pull up, and we have the tools, we have the talent, we've got the crew, and, hopefully we'll be out in Buka sometime before the end of this calendar year to rule that one in or out. That would be a big one. If we can get that out and it's not her plane, then okay, on to the next one. Now we can shrink this. And now this, now her world becomes a little bit smaller because now we can sort of look at Japanese capture and some of the other ones. I think, Castaway is, for as much love as we've shown it and as much airtime as I've given it. The people criticize me for that all the time, but I feel like Castaway is kind of, I don't want to say it's out, but I would say that island has been, canvassed and walked and searched, off island, on island. They're getting ready to do another, Dr. Richard Pettigrew, who was on the show recently. They're getting ready to go out to look at this Turaya object that's in the lagoon there, on Nikamororo or in Nikamororo. If that strikes out, if they strike out there, then, I don't know where else you could go, for Nikamororo. I think that's pretty much, I don't want to say a done deal, but I feel like you can kind of put some effort into some other theories that are a lot less worked and probably need a lot more of the support. And ultimately, I think, you just basically you make a list, go down that list, have each other help everybody out, which is what's happening with Buka. And I think, again, it's a testament to where the case is now. And I think it's a testament to new blood coming into the case, mixing with some of the old blood. And I think it's just a testament of sort of how the shifting of the sort of the investigation is going. And only good things can happen, I think, when you do it that way.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's move off of Amelia temporarily. And
Yes.
I know it's tough for you, Chris, but
Yes. No, it always comes back. I trust me. I try. I try sometimes, and it's like, hey, let's talk about Earhart. Okay.
I'm sure it'll come back in this episode. But you do, the Vanished podcast and have done episodes on a lot of different figures. What is your favorite of those episodes that I know there are multiple episodes, but let's say series?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite series from Vanish that you've done? And, Matt and I have had the pleasure of working with you on a couple of those.
You have.
So
you have.
my favorite personally is the Ripper, because I want to cover the Ripper on Graveyard Tales, but we've got to find a way to do it justice. So your series absolutely did it justice, but what is your favorite of those series that you've done?
That's a hard question, actually. I have love for all of them for different reasons. Ripper really sort of proved to me that we had an audience past Earhart, right? Because at that point we had just done Earhart, and I remember very vividly talking with not only with Vanessa, about it beforehand, and then talking with Jen about it and asking her, hey, could I don't know if people really want to hear from us on anything other than Earhart, and that case, it definitely proved me wrong for sure. We had an audience; it was still there, and they really loved it. I got to tell you, the John Wilkes Booth piece we did, I think, was probably, sometimes it's in the running for my favorite, even more so than the Earhart stuff that we did. The Earhart stuff has the added bonus of like the shock and awe of like the trial by jury, and Jen getting to actually like cross-examine these experts for the first time, and them not really knowing what she was going to throw at them. Yeah. So that makes for some really great, compelling audio. But Booth was something we had wanted to do for some time, and we were going to originally do Booth, and I remember we had to sort of call an audible on it because a bunch of political stuff was going on, and it would have been bad for us to have John Wilkes Booth as the poster boy for our podcast at that point in time, particularly. So we went with what we thought was a better route, which was Jack the Ripper. And then we came back and we did Booth. But I would say Booth was probably my most favorite one. That story is absolutely bonkers. It's just an absolutely, when I sat down with Nate Orlowick and did our first off the record chat, like my head hurt after. I couldn't couldn't imagine, this, but the way he lays it out and the way he explains it and sort of the way he sort of, talks about the theory, it's like, holy shit. And, when you start looking at, Andrew Johnson and how he kind of boarded Lincoln's ticket and, sort of, what he may or may not have had to gain with Lincoln dying, Lincoln premonizing his own death, there being a Booth mummy running around supposedly wrapped up as Booth, and all kinds of craziness, the indoctrination of Booth into someone who was certainly a sympathizer, but just turned into something else entirely, was very incredible. And then, of course, you had the 1862 attempted kidnapping of Lincoln that was thwarted, by the birth of the FBI. And just it's just a wild story. So I think that whole journey through 1865, and then, of course, having the folks from 1865, that amazing podcast, like chip in, and some of the voice actors return, and kind of like almost like as a quasi sequel, you know what I mean, to that podcast, was kind of fun. So that was probably my favorite one. Zodiac was definitely the hardest one we did. Introducing Zodiac killers as opposed to a Zodiac killer. Maybe it's one guy writing the letter, one guy doing the killing kind of thing. The whole Don Chaney aspect of it, that was wild. And then I really loved the Jesse James stuff. Jesse James was Probably probably, I mean, and this is coming from somebody who covered Jack the Ripper. Jesse James was probably the most cold-blooded killer, at least American killers that we've ever. That guy was a stone cold killer. I mean, he was really birthed and really developed his young mind around death. I mean, it was just all around death. And, going with Quantrell's, guerrillas and just the people he ran with, Bloody Bill Anderson and some of those people. I mean, good God. I mean, of course he was a cold-blooded killer. So that story was amazing. I know it's a very long-winded answer, but I love them all for different reasons. And I think, but if I had to pick one, that Booth one, man, that I've listened to it about a year and a half ago, and I was like, it still holds up. Like, it's really, really strong. And Jen and Dave Taylor, they're married now. They met on that show, so that was really cool. Very special. Kind of gave it an extra layer. So I'd say Booth. It was probably my favorite one, and it even rivals Earhart, which some people listening to this when it comes out might find hard to believe coming from me.
Well, the interesting thing about not just Booth, but the entire the Lincoln presidency, and all of those things, how there is so much intertwined in that, how these characters are connected on so many different levels. When you start looking into it, it's fascinating. How these lives that you think, oh, well, there's no connection, to this one and that one. And then you start learning all of these people are interconnected, either in the past or in the future. They cross paths, whether they realize it at the time or not. History shows us that they were all intermingling at the time. And you're just like, man, this just, I never realized how deep, that case, the John Wilkes Booth case actually went until, we actually heard you and Jen do this. And, I mean, if you are a member of the Graveyard and you haven't gone and listened, all have vanished, but grab this one. I mean, you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We threw an awful lot into that, and Jen did some amazing work in that. I think I put together the best case I possibly could, and I think what was really interesting is what was going on politically at the time in the country was very similar to what happened in 1865 with the whole Johnson situation and everything. And so it was really an interesting sort of show to do. I didn't think we'd get 5 episodes out of it. Like, I really didn't think it would go that hard. But it's like 20 hours long, I think, or something like that, if I remember correctly. I don't know, maybe not, maybe 12 or 13 hours long, but still, it's a lot of content. And when you go to, when you listen to Nate's theory and you listen to like how Booth, got past the Navy Yard Bridge, as just for an example, and how he postulates that he did that, and what the sort of what was behind that, as opposed to what history's written, it's compelling. But I think what Jen and Dave did on the show was they did what Jen's always been so excellent at doing, is she defends history as it's written really, really well. And I have to sort of bring something to the table that is compelling enough. But I think with Booth, I think we definitely, if you listen to that, you might think, well, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And my whole thing is, if I can convince our listeners to do their own research and just look into some of the stuff, like the medical report. I looked at that medical report, and I was, 14 people were identified the body of Booth aboard the Montauk, and 13 of those 14 were directly related to Edwin Stanton in the War Department. That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
It's absolutely weird. They had conspirators on board the Montauk that could have walked in and could have identified Booth in a heartbeat, and they didn't allow them in. They didn't allow them to do it because I think Stanton was under an awful lot of pressure to find Lincoln's killer, They needed to put this to bed. And if you believe the theory, and I'm not saying it's true, you got to listen to the show for that. But if you believe the theory states that, there's a reason why they had specific people identify the body. It's because it wasn't his body. And so, that's sort of where we kind of take the show, that series, and kind of the sort of pieces of evidence that we put up, against history as it's written, and see if it holds water. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't,
Yeah.
So, and we never know. That's the beauty of the show. Like, I don't know what the hell Jen's gonna, she ate me alive on certain parts of that series, but that's the beauty of the show is like, it's not scripted in that matter,
Yeah. I have learned that I will never argue with Jen. Whether I agree with her or not, for the sake of my own ego, I'm going to say I agree with her because she will smack me down in a heartbeat.
She's very good at what she does.
Yeah,
she's very good at what she does. Yeah, and I remember telling some of these Earhart people when we had when we were going back and forth in emails before we were recording the first season, I was like, look, and I was trying to tell certain people, I was like, look, she knows her field better than you do. Like, you might be a scientist and you might put this person, like, she eats cops she eats cops on the stand for a living. Like, that's, she's very good. And so that was really what had me the most excited about, is listening to that audio. I'll never forget it, editing that audio and listening to it for the first time and hearing her cross exams for the first time. I was like, man, she absolutely ate all these guys alive, and girls, in certain cases, there were certain people that, I would build up. I remember I would build up somebody and I would do a 20-minute direct examination with them or whatever. And then she'd come in 2 questions and that would be it. And it would be like a 2-minute. I'd be like, damn, like, all right.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what she does. And that's one of the aspects that makes the show good. I think is her, she just doesn't have an iron on the fire. It's just a job. Yeah. It's just a job. I go in, I do what I do, and I leave, and that's it. Yep. And that's what I wanted when I first reached out to her. It was like, I don't want somebody to have any, be passionate, but I don't want passion to cloud your questioning or your line of questioning. I just want you to do what you do. And she didn't disappoint, certainly.
The one grievance I have with your shows is that every time I listen to them, I think, God, I've got to work harder. I've got to do better. I really suck.
So, that means a lot coming from you, because that's a big compliment for me.
It always makes me think, I didn't do as good as I should have done, and maybe I should consult with Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I could say the same about you guys and Astonishing Legends and a million other shows that I try to cherry pick things from and try to be in the same wheelhouse as. So, I mean, I appreciate that, man. That's very nice of you to say that. So, yeah.
Chris, we've talked a lot about all the stuff you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your upcoming projects. What are we looking forward to later this year?
God, this is going to take like 45 minutes.
Okay. Lay it on us.
I'm going to do this as quick as I can. I'll run through the Earhart ones real quick, because they're Earhart and everybody kind of expects that. We do have a really cool project that we've been working on in secret, actually a couple of them, but the first one that's going to come out is a case study alongside students from the University of New Mexico, Space and Law. It's headed up by Day Hockman Vihel, who's an amazing woman, and she's a space law attorney. And the whole concept behind the project is who owns NR 16020, which is her serial number for the aircraft. So should the aircraft be found tomorrow, let's say, who owns it? Legally speaking, how does it work? And we were able to, through the course of the last maybe 2 or 3 months or so, dig into a lot of stuff. And we have a paper that's out for legal review right now that will be published, that I will be part of, alongside these amazing students that have dug into this question. And we have talked to everybody from all the major players you might expect. We've reached out to Purdue. We've talked to the Earhart family. We've talked to the Putnam family. We've talked to all those major players. And we will have sort of a determination made in that paper, in that case study, and that will be out very soon. It's in final review right now, so they'll release it. We also have a special series for Chasing Earhart that's going to basically be all the behind the scenes on that, a lot of the meetings, a lot of the stuff that we came out with, and sort of a narrative scripted piece that will come out with it. So that's coming very soon. There is also another pod that I've been developing sort of for about 3 or 4 years now, speaking about Japanese capture. The name of the pod was just released. We just dropped the poster for it not too long ago. It's called Bombshells, an Amelia Earhart story. And it's all about, having some fun with historical fiction and having, some fun with sort of the narrative and everything. I will tell you that everything that's in this audio drama, if you like 1865 and scripted shows like that, everything that's in this audio drama is all based off of real theory, real pieces of evidence that support different theories and real, lore and things of that nature. And this show just sort of allows us to sort of have fun with it. We have a full cast and crew. We just casted our Amelia Earhart and our Fred Noonan, and I think they're fantastic. We've got some test clips. Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We have that going. The re-release of Rabbit Hole is coming out, and I've been saying that for a while, but it's going to be about 100 pages longer, if you can believe it. It's like the director's cut of it. That's coming pretty soon. What else? I've got other podcasts. We have a change coming to Vanished that is going to sort of change the structure of the show. Not sort of how we do things, but it's sort of going to change kind of what we're able to investigate. I'll just say it sort of that way. And I'll of course, we'll make that announcement on the feed, Jen and I together, once that's ready. And then I've got yet another show I've been developing, privately. That's sort of my first, step into the true crime genre. And I've been sort of, talking to a lot of creators and podcasters, a lot of my friends and things about sort of, stepping into that and everything that entails. And I can tell you that it is the concept for the show is just major crimes, unsolved crimes and cases out of the Kansas City and surrounding areas, where the heartland of the country. And the name of the show is Gray Lines, and it's going to be, of course, hosted by me, and it's going to be sort of up and vanished kind of style wise, as far as like the grittiness of kind of how we record things. We do have our first case. We're going to be opening with the disappearance and the death of Tanya Knight, which is a very horrific story out of Kansas City. And so we'll be opening with that, and then we'll be covering some other cases that might dip into the paranormal and some things, and we'll kind of have some fun with it and see kind of what kind of audience we can attract. So
yeah,
me and my friends are still going.
Yep.
I got tons, man. I've always got something going on.
Yep.
Too much. Way too much. Don't do this. People are listening. If you're creating, don't follow that blueprint, because it's going to drive you insane. We have the booth book coming too. That's coming soon. So yeah, I mean, lots and lots and lots of stuff to keep me busy, to stack my plate for.
I don't know how you do it, honestly, because Matt and I, we do Graveyard Tales, and then we do Side Quest, which is the second show we do that's just on Patreon. Mm-hmm. And that's enough. Matt and I have talked about other shows, but then we're like, I don't know when we would fit it in. We already record super late when we record, and then the editing is crazy and all that stuff. So Matt and I have kind of said, well, Graveyard Tales is going to have to suffice for all of our weird ideas. And if we have a weird idea, we got to try to fit it in somehow into Graveyard Tales. Because we would love to do multiple shows, because we have those ideas and stuff. We just, the timing, I don't know how you do it. I think you probably are one of the only people I know, one of the few people I know that spends more time with headphones on than I do. Oh yeah. 100%. I mean, they don't, I'm always QCing something
right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's got
my neighbors give me hell all the time and talk about when I'm driving, I'm always QCing something or listening to something. I drive with my headphones on a lot of times, which is probably not the safest thing to do. But I mean, the schedule is wild, and you have to, I kind of run on like a 24-hour clock, to be honest. And you kind of have to do that, and you have to spread your time, kind of thin in importance. Luckily, some of the projects I have, other people are working on them with me. I didn't write the legal review paper. Obviously, I just sort of like kind of it was a project lead for that, just kind of helped them and fed them information, and, was a gopher for a lot of it. Go get this, get me this, introduce us to this person, and that kind of thing. So it didn't take up a whole lot of my time. But I'm always in Earhart meetings. We're in meetings for Buka all the time, for other projects. Yeah, it's become like a full-time job. It really has. Yep. But, I love doing it. And sometimes you get super lazy, and it's hard to find the drive sometimes, especially when you're feeling shitty or you're having a bad day or whatever, and you don't want to do anything. But if you don't do it, if you don't jump on it, it's, you drown in it very quickly, very, very quickly. And people have expectations. And, we've been off the air for Vanish for about 10 months now. We've taken a long break, and, I think that's why you'll start hearing some movement, here on that front pretty soon. It's just, you have to sort of like, take hiatuses and things of that nature. Vanish is a seasonal show. So, we definitely do a season of Vanish, or we do where we take, 2 or 3 cases and cover them, or just one big case and cover it. I'm also, if there's not enough, I'm also neck deep into the Kennedy assassination right now, because we're covering that for, we're coming up on that. And that is a whole talk about everybody being in one place at one time, with the booth thing and all that, all the different Kennedy theories, the whole Cuba thing, the mafia thing, the government, obviously the lone gunman idea, or maybe there's a second gunman. Do you know who was there the day that Kennedy was shot out of all those people? All of them. Everybody was there. So it's like, well, okay. So, it's that whole story is the whole Kennedy story, the Zapruder film, the direction of the bullet, and, you're watching this guy get assassinated over and over again, but the way his head moves, the things like that, how the medical, how it was looked at medically after. Again, a lot of weird little similarities to John Wilkes Booth in 1865 and all that. And it's weird how history sort of like kind of repeats itself in certain areas, and you can sort of see it play out.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it does. So,
and looking forward to all that, because that is very interesting. And when you do get some of these other things out there, and all that, we'll have to have you back on to discuss those, because I know Matt and I are fascinated about all that stuff that you've mentioned. That's why we love your show. But if you're listening to this episode and you don't listen to one of Chris's 300 podcast, you need to go find one.
It's not hard.
And listen to it, because you are going to be impressed. And I'm almost afraid to say that, because once they start liking your show, they may go, wait, I don't need Graveyard Tales anymore. I got Chris.
We can't cover what you guys cover. Like, we don't, you have those same conversations with like Scott and Forrest and all that. Like, we can't. I'll tell you guys, when Jen will tell you this too. If you guys have done a show or a series on something that we're talking about, or if AL's done a series, like we tend to not really touch it. And it's just because, like, for us, it's more of like, well, we've got to add something that's new. You guys cover stuff so thoroughly. It's so well done that, you can't, sometimes you can't. What do you have to add to that other than your opinion, which is like, well, okay. Yep. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, kind of similar, kind of type that, feeling. But, so, sometimes it's just like, we do the same thing, good. Man. There's been stuff that you've covered, like the Ripper, and then there's stuff that AL has covered early on before Matt and I started the show. And Matt and I have had this conversation. We should really do that, but we can't. We could, but we just can't, because it was Astonishing Legends did it, and they did it so well that
we don't feel like we're adding anything to it. We're just another voice in the echo chamber. So, and I appreciate the compliments, but we definitely have two different styles, the Vanished and Amelia Earhart style, and then the Graveyard Tale style. Matt and I are a little more irreverent than you and Jen are. Y'all seem to take it a little more seriously, where Matt and I will throw in a fart joke where it's probably not necessary.
But people need that sometimes.
It's always
it's like
necessary.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
it's always necessary.
You can cut the tension with a knife. People need a that kind of, and that's, I typically will tell people, again, don't follow the blueprint. I mean, if you think you've got something that you can add, or sometimes if you've got a really an audience and a fever that really loves your stuff, like they don't really necessarily care what you add to it. They just kind of want to hear your take on it, because they're just fans of you guys. They're just fans of the show. Like, well, I'd love to hear Graveyard Tale's take on, Devil's Den, like, or anything else like that. But yeah, I mean, we try to do the best we can, the best job we can with it. And we try to be as thorough as we can. We will turn down cases if we don't feel like we can put the effort required or that the case deserves into it. We will not do it yet. We'll wait, or we'll shift it to a year later or whatever. Or we'll wait till it hits the news. The Kennedy stuff's been a blessing. It couldn't have happened at a better time with all the Kennedy files coming out and all that. It's like that wasn't planned, but I happen to know Mark Zaid, who is a really good friend of mine who, he kind of like told me, and he gets he's the guy that defended a lot of the whistleblowers against the Capitol. Mark Zaid, if you don't know who he is, real quick, he's a very, very well-known attorney. He's his clients are he's been in everything from he's the one that originally litigated the Booth, the Greenmount Cemetery for the John Wilkes Booth case and everything. That was like his first case out of like I think he hadn't even graduated or passed the bar yet or something. He was a green when he did that. Yeah. But he's touched on everything from Princess Diana to, I mean, everything you could think of. But he's a good friend of mine, and he happens to be very, very a monster expert on the Kennedy case. And he was just telling me, he's like, hey, files are incoming, and it might not be sexy, but it's like, it's something. It's puts it in the consciousness, and it's good timing to do the show. So yeah, I mean, it's always fun. This kind of stuff's always fun to do.
Yeah. Well,
it has to be. Yeah.
Hopefully we can get back on and do some more stuff together with you and Jen. Sure. And every time we do, and we've been on there a couple times, and like Matt will make y'all laugh, or I'll make y'all laugh, and I'm like, well, this just goes against their show. We're just we're just making a mockery of them.
We need it. People need to laugh. It's good. We do take it serious. But we love to. I mean, it's good. It's really good. I love having personalities on the show. I don't care. Personalities on the show, where that's what makes the show. The guests on the show. The people that sit in on the show that we consult with, I mean, that's what makes the whole show. If it was just me and Jen sitting here, or just me sitting here talking for, that gets old real quick. People want to hear from, our co-hosts, our guests, our people like that have different opinions, and it's a lot of fun. So anytime, man, we'll talk about something off air that I think you guys, we could do something together on pretty soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, if you haven't checked out stuff that Chris does and Chris does with Jen, go over there and check it out. I'll put some links in the show notes to some of his bigger, more established shows, and you can follow that rabbit trail onto some of his newer stuff that's coming out, to his books and all that. But Chris, thank you again so much for sitting down and talking with us, and talking Amelia updates and weird disappearances and mysteries, and we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
You got it.
All right. Thanks again to Chris Williamson for coming on and talking to us tonight, hanging out in the graveyard with Adam and myself. We appreciate it. Like I said, we're good friends with Chris. We have been for several years. It was good to have him on and just, talk about the things that he's done and the things he's got coming up. Don't forget to go check out his shows, Chasing Earhart and Vanished. You can get those shows now wherever you can find Graveyard Tales, you can find those shows as well. Don't forget to go and check out our Facebook group. It is called The Graveyard. We've got thousands of members in there talking about everything from, hey, I've got this weird stuff going on in my house, to, man, I've got a funny dad joke for you. So go and check that out. Don't forget to check out our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. There you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show, and you can become a patron. And as Adam said at the top of the show, we've got a huge back catalog of bonus episodes, including side quests for our $10 patrons. Check it out. It's a perfect time to do it. Get you some extra Matt and Adam in your life.
You know you need it.
That's right. And until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.